This is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how can we get out with a ceasefire?
All right. So Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Hostin just can't seem to stay out of the hot seat, and her favorite sparring partner, Bill Maher, isn't exactly known for turning the other cheek. These two might flash their best smiles for the cameras, but let's be honest, there's no love lost between them. Ever since Maher's last fiery appearance on The View, where he mopped the floor with Hostin, the gloves have been off. And now Maher's back again, delivering another verbal smackdown that sent Hostin straight to the metaphorical cleaners. So what has Sunny Hostin done this time? And how did Bill Maher clap back? Stick around, folks. You're not going to want to miss this one. Trust me, it's a front row ticket to drama you didn't even know you needed. Bill Maher and Sunny Hostin reignited their ideological feud when Hostin made a polarizing comment about Donald Trump's recent presidential victory. On The View, Hostin argued that Trump's win was largely due to the support of uneducated white women. This remark has since sparked outrage, fueling debates over the narratives and divisive language often associated with progressive commentary in mainstream media. Hostin specifically pointed to demographic data, stating that while 92% of black women backed Vice President Kamala Harris, around 52% of white women, particularly those without college degrees, voted for Trump.
Of black women voted for the vice president. You have Latinas in the 70 percentile voting for the vice president. What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump, uneducated white women.
But didn't stop there. Hostin also threw Latino men into the mix, pointing out an uptick in their support for Trump. She framed this as part of some grand cultural resentment conspiracy, as if Trump voters gathered in secret meetings to bond over bad decisions and resentment casseroles. Of course, when the internet predictably exploded, Hostin hastily clarified that she was just quoting polling data classifications, as if the phrase uneducated white women suddenly sounds better with a pie chart to back it up. Spoiler alert, it didn't.
White women like being called uneducated white women. I think the economy matters, national security matters. But when you put people in these boxes, I think that's a takeaway from this, right?
Critics argue that this rhetoric, often seen as elitist, can alienate moderate voters and reinforce perceptions that progressive movements are disconnected from the broader electorate. Hostin's comments also underscore a key aspect of woke culture, its tendency to frame electoral outcomes in terms of identity politics rather than policy or ideology. While this approach resonates with certain segments of the left, it risks oversimplifying complex voter motivations. By attributing Trump's win to uneducated white women, Hostin arguably reduced a multifaceted political phenomenon to a single demographic critique, inviting a backlash from both conservatives and centrists. And that was when Hostin's nemesis Bill Maher entered the chat.
I asked ChatGPT, are there any similarities between today's woke revolution and Chairman Mao's cultural revolution of the 1960s? And it wrote back, how long do you have?
Set the tone with his signature blend of sarcasm and sharp critique, taking a swipe at Hostin and her woke brigade by suggesting they do something truly revolutionary. Look in the mirror. Instead of endlessly blaming external forces, be it uneducated white women, cultural resentment, or secret Trump-loving Latino men, Maher challenged them to engage in some much-needed self-reflection. And honestly, he might be onto something. After all, if every election loss is chalked up to an external villain, how do you ever learn, adapt, or dare we say, grow? Maybe they should take a leaf out of the Democrats' playbook because Trump surprised everybody in the presidential election.
Like in every demographic. The exit poll said he grabbed 52% of white women. He also got their votes.
His advice resonates because it hits at the core of the woke movement's weakness, an apparent inability to consider that their messaging may sometimes be the problem. Hostin's comments about uneducated white women voting for Trump didn't come off as insightful social commentary. They felt more like a smug dismissal of a large swath of voters. It's the kind of statement that doesn't just fail to persuade, it alienates people. And Maher, ever the provocateur, wasn't about to let that slide. By calling for introspection, Maher essentially asked the woke mob to consider whether their approach might actually be pushing people away. Something Trump and his supporters did that swung the elections in their favor.
It's just the facts. It's just the facts. Trump won all the swing states, all 7. I mean, he ran the table. Trump won so big. Today he called the Secretary of State in Georgia and he asked him to lose him 11,000.
Elections are at their core a battle for hearts and minds. If your message doesn't capture the hearts and minds of the populace, don't be surprised when the ballot box doesn't go your way. Maher's point is simple. Instead of blaming voters for not seeing the light, maybe it's time to reassess the way that light is being presented. In an era where polarization reigns supreme, the side that can communicate effectively, not just to its base, but across divides, is the side that wins. Until the woke mob trades its mirrors for microphones that actually resonate with a broader audience, Maher's critique will continue to ring true. And Hostin, well, let's just say her critique of Trump voters only exposed her inability to properly assess the outcome of the elections, and Bill Maher lampooned her for it. Interestingly, Maher wasn't the only outspoken celeb to hit out at Hostin. Another vocal critic who has a thorny past with Hostin is Meghan McCain.
Look at me that way. I speak for conservatives on this show. I mean, I know what they're thinking. No, but you look like I'm saying something inaccurate.
No,
not you.
I'm listening to you.
McCain didn't just call out Sunny Hostin for her uneducated white women comment. She took a scorched earth approach, blasting The View as a radical progressive insane asylum. On Twitter, McCain doubled down, saying, "Respectfully, please stop sending me clips from The View. It's a radical progressive insane asylum, and that is why I left years ago." Her critique reflects a broader frustration with what she perceives as the show's lurch toward hyper-progressive ideology, where dissenting viewpoints are about as welcome as pineapple on pizza.
No, you're angry. I get it that you're angry that Trump's president, like a lot of people
I'm angry
are.
about every single
but
thing
I don't
he's doing.
think yelling at me is gonna fix the problem.
Comments fit into the larger conversation about woke culture, which often prioritizes ideological purity over constructive dialogue. She seems to believe The View embodies this trend, where hosts compete to out-woke each other rather than engage in balanced, meaningful debate. For McCain, the show has become less about representing diverse perspectives and more about reinforcing a singular, progressive narrative, a dynamic she argues alienates both conservative voices and moderate viewers alike. Her remarks underline a growing concern that woke culture, in its eagerness to highlight social inequities, risks creating echo chambers where criticism is dismissed and ideological rigidity reigns supreme. To McCain, The View and Sunny Hostin aren't doing the leftists any favors with their woke agenda. Sadly, this isn't the only time Hostin has gaffed. A few weeks ago, Sunny Hostin claimed that the presidential bar had been set too low, making it easy for Donald Trump to become president.
Asked, I hear about running for political office in the future, and some people have said that they could see you running for president. Would you do that? You think you qualify to run for president? I mean, the bar is pretty low anyway.
Statement, while provocative, falls apart under closer examination and reflects the broader pattern of the woke mob inventing flimsy explanations to rationalize Trump's victory. First, it implies that Trump's success was purely a result of diminished standards rather than a reflection of voter sentiment or dissatisfaction with the political establishment. This oversimplification completely ignores the millions of Americans who were drawn to Trump's outsider status, his ability to connect with their frustrations, and his rejection of traditional political norms. More importantly, Hostin's argument inadvertently diminishes the importance of the electoral process itself. Suggesting that the bar was lowered dismisses the complexity of the issues that led to Trump's rise. For instance, issues like economic uncertainty, political disillusionment, and cultural tensions that many Americans felt were ignored by mainstream politicians contributed to Trump's victory. It also exposes a double standard. Would the same argument be applied if a candidate Hostin supported won under similar circumstances? Of course not. Fortunately, Hostin's unguarded statement didn't go unchecked, as Whoopi Goldberg forced her to rephrase her statement, but Hostin was adamant.
Rephrase that.
I mean, I just think that the bar is really low because Trump really had no political experience and went from 0 to 100, right? He didn't start the city council and stuff like that. So the bar is low. Anyone can run.
Truth, Hostin's claim is emblematic of a larger trend among the woke crowd, where Trump's presidency isn't treated as a wake-up call to address real concerns, but as an anomaly to be rationalized away. This mindset prevents meaningful self-reflection within progressive circles and alienates the very voters they need to win back. Instead of dismissing Trump's victory as the result of low standards, they might want to examine how their own policies, messaging, and condescension toward dissenting voices contributed to his rise in the first place. Bill Maher dismantled Sunny Hostin's statement by pointing out the real reason behind Donald Trump's victory. Trump won the election by attracting more voters through compelling arguments and pragmatic messaging, while the Democrats were struggling to get their message across.
Into these eye-popping numbers, Trump has a 30-point edge.
with registered voters on the question of which candidate would handle immigration and border security better. Trump has a 23-point edge among Latino voters. You're not even getting the people you're supposedly pandering to.
Emphasize that Trump's success wasn't about lowered standards, as Hostin claimed, but rather his ability to tap into the frustrations of everyday Americans. His messaging, while divisive to some, resonated with voters who felt ignored or dismissed by the political establishment. Trump's appeal lay in his ability to address issues like economic stagnation, border security, and cultural shifts in a way that felt direct and relatable, even if controversial. This authenticity, whether perceived or real, set him apart from traditional politicians who often appeared out of touch. By dismissing his victory as a mere fluke or the result of diminished expectations, the woke crowd ignores the nuanced reasons behind his widespread support. Maher's critique serves as a reminder that underestimating Trump's strategy and appeal only widens the divide between progressives and the voters they need to reach. Bill Maher had a word of advice for Sunny Hostin and the far left.
Tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging. You just lost a crazy contest to an actual crazy person. What a shocker that the people who see everything through the lens of race and sex see their election loss as a result of racism and sexism.
Maher quipped that identity politics cost the Democrats the presidential election. According to Maher, the party's obsession with race, gender, and every microcategory in between left a lot of voters feeling like they didn't make the cut for the Democrats. Meanwhile, the issues that actually keep people up at night, like paying bills, keeping jobs, and affording healthcare, were treated as a side note. Maher joked that instead of rolling out policies for the masses, the Democrats handed Trump the playbook for how to win over frustrated, ignored voters. It's like they threw a party, but only invited people who could check at least 3 diversity boxes. Maher said with a smirk, by focusing so much on identity over unity, they managed to push moderate and working-class voters straight into Trump's arms, who, for all his flaws, at least promised to pay attention to them. However, Hostin and the leftists can't seem to grasp these basic facts, and instead are trying their hardest to pin Trump's victory on some sheer luck, but trust Maher to put them in their place. This isn't the first time Maher and Hostin have had to face off. Y'all remember this spicy interview on The View?
Question. But it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Eerie exchange, and Sunny Hostin came out absolutely scorched. She simply couldn't handle the heat Bill Maher brought to the table. From the start, Hostin tried to twist Maher's words, attempting to pin allegations on him. A classic woke tactic. But Maher was way ahead of her. Not only did he sidestep her rhetorical traps with ease, but he turned the tables in spectacular fashion. Maher's sharp wit and no-nonsense style left Hostin struggling to keep up as he dismantled her arguments piece by piece. He exposed the logical inconsistencies in her claims, highlighted the absurdity of woke narratives, and delivered his rebuttals with the perfect mix of humor and bite. It wasn't just a debate, it was a masterclass in how to beat the woke mob at their own game. By the end, Hostin wasn't just outmatched, she was left grasping for excuses.
Woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized, and so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustice.
Many who watched the interview were baffled that Sunny Hostin was so triggered by the term woke. This is the same Hostin, known for her sharp tongue and unapologetic critiques, who once called Alyssa Farah Griffin childless during a heated debate. And now, here she was, complaining about being offended by a single
Teachers to have licensing, required participating in private schools.
If I may get in, just to make it a conversation.
But because I have children and because I looked at private schools.
Yep, that's the unmissable Hostin right there, referencing Alyssa's childlessness. Talk about double standards. The irony wasn't lost on viewers. The same crowd that dishes out endless outrage and labels anyone who disagrees with them as problematic suddenly can't handle a little pushback when the tables are turned. This moment was emblematic of a larger issue with the woke movement. They've built an entire brand around triggering others, hurling accusations, and expecting their targets to grin and bear it. Yet, the second they're on the receiving end, they crumble, claiming offense and retreating to victimhood. It's a level of hypocrisy that doesn't just spark frustration, it alienates people who might otherwise engage in meaningful conversations. Maher's takedown of this mindset didn't just expose Hostin's double standards, it shone a light on the broader contradictions fueling the woke mob's growing unpopularity. Anyway, Maher wasn't going to let Hostin's hypocrisy slide, so he issued a sharp
thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that? But words do migrate.
Excellent response from Maher. Indeed, words do migrate over time, but the woke mob has become particularly adept at hijacking terms and distorting their original meanings. Take the word equity, for instance. Originally used to describe fairness and equal opportunity, it has now been twisted into a tool for promoting forced outcomes, where the goal is no longer equality of opportunity, but equality of result, often at the expense of merit and individual effort. Another example is the term social justice. Once associated with advocating for marginalized groups and fighting for fair treatment, it has now been co-opted to push an agenda that often prioritizes group identity over individual rights and freedoms. The term has been weaponized to label anyone who questions progressive policies as unjust or even oppressive. The woke mob has redefined these terms to fit their narrative, rendering them nearly unrecognizable. This manipulation of language not only stifles meaningful discourse, but also makes it harder to have honest, nuanced conversations about the issues they claim to care about. However, for the sake of argument, Maher was ready to change the term woke if Hostin found it offensive, but still delivered his punchlines with the calmness of a
Use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it the super far left, but don't tell me the left
Or maybe the super far right.
He's talking about the left. Well, then
okay,
I'm woke.
but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed.
Left has changed, and unfortunately, not for the better. What once championed free speech, equality, and open debate has increasingly morphed into a movement that prioritizes cancel culture, ideological purity, and identity politics. Take the recent controversy over J.K. Rowling, for example. Once celebrated as a feminist icon, she's now vilified by many on the left for expressing her views on gender, with calls for her books to be removed from libraries. Another example is the debate around free speech on college campuses, where speakers with opposing viewpoints are often shouted down or even disinvited, actions that run counter to the core values of open dialogue. These incidents highlight how the left has shifted from advocating for inclusivity and fairness to embracing a more authoritarian, my way or the highway mentality, leaving little room for respectful disagreement.
Any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left? Watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas? That straightened me up.
Here's Bill Maher explaining why he distanced himself from the woke mob. They began championing the wrong causes and, in many cases, siding with the villains. Maher, a lifelong liberal, has been vocal about how the movement has lost its way, shifting from advocating for genuine progress to promoting counterproductive ideas that harm the very groups they claim to support.
Astounding to me that they can't tell the good guys from the bad guys. I mean, just morally. I mean, let me tell you, if you're for Hamas, just live in Gaza for a day. And I'm not talking about while the war is on. I mean, before the war. Trust me, you would go running and screaming and begging to live in Tel Aviv.
Bill Maher released another truth bomb. Sunny Hostin and the woke mob protesting against Israel would run to Tel Aviv if they visited Palestine for just a day. He also criticized woke culture's defense of authoritarian regimes, such as their reluctance to condemn countries with severe human rights abuses, all while obsessing over microaggressions at home. Maher also points out their tendency to vilify free speech, labeling any dissent as harmful or hate speech. By focusing on trivial or performative battles, they undermine meaningful causes and alienate people who would otherwise support progressive ideals. It's no surprise Maher decided to part ways with a movement that no longer aligns with the principles he once stood for. Bill Maher was taking Hostin and her ilk to the cleaners. Hostin could sense defeat, but wouldn't want to give up easily, so she laid another trap for Maher, hoping to save her fate.
All concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely children and women.
Of course.
And are you at all concerned about the fact that the International Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi?
Sunny Hostin attempted to play the innocent civilians card, trying to bait Bill Maher into making a statement that could jeopardize his standing with Jewish communities and conservatives. It was a calculated move designed to twist his words into something controversial. But Maher, ever the seasoned debater, saw through her tactics and deftly avoided the trap. This approach is a hallmark of the woke mob. They often frame questions or situations in a way that forces opponents into a lose-lose scenario. If you disagree, you're labeled insensitive or bigoted. If you comply, you've essentially conceded to their narrative. It's a tactic used to silence dissent, pressure individuals into compliance, and create viral sound bites to discredit their targets. Maher's ability to sidestep this strategy not only highlighted his sharp wit, but also exposed the manipulative nature of such debates. By refusing to fall into the trap, he maintained his integrity and reminded viewers that intellectual honesty doesn't have to bow to performative outrage. Once he had successfully sidestepped the trap, Maher released another fiery take.
The Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi Netanyahu.
Well, that's ridiculous, but it's a war.
Why?
It's a war. Because it's a war and they were attacked and they're defending themselves.
A brilliant answer by Maher. Let's face it, it's a war, and Israel absolutely has the right to defend itself against external aggression. What are they supposed to do? Sit back, offer tea, and politely ask rockets to stop raining down? Maher's point cuts through the performative outrage. No country would tolerate constant threats to its sovereignty without responding. While the woke mob loves to complicate the issue with endless moral equivalencies, the reality is simpler. If someone's launching rockets at your house, you don't send them flowers. You secure your safety. Israel's actions aren't about provocation. They're about survival in a region where it's surrounded by neighbors who at times openly advocate for its destruction. Sure, peace is the ideal outcome, but as Maher rightly implied, peace doesn't magically appear when one side consistently escalates violence. Sometimes defense isn't just a right, it's a necessity, no matter how inconvenient that truth might be for some armchair critics. Now that Maher had obliterated Hostin's argument, it was time to set a trap of his own.
This is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how do we do that with a ceasefire?
All right. So Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jewish people.
Set the perfect trap, starting with a deceptively simple question. Do you want Palestine destroyed? Without missing a beat, and perhaps without fully considering the weight of her words, Hostin blurted out, yes. And just like that, she walked right into it. This is the problem with the woke mob. They're so busy trying to score points or prove their moral superiority that they don't stop to think about the contradictions in their rhetoric. Hostin's knee-jerk response was a classic case of trying to align with what she thought was the right stance without realizing how easily it could be flipped against her. Maher, of course, wasted no time capitalizing on the moment, highlighting the hypocrisy of condemning one side for defending itself while casually endorsing the destruction of another. It's the kind of logic that makes you wonder if they're playing checkers while Maher's out here mastering chess. And honestly, isn't this what always happens when the woke crowd takes the stage? They overreach, trip over their own arguments, and end up revealing their own double standards, all while trying to lecture the rest of us about morality.
Israel 5 times. They've started 5 wars since they were given that land back. They could have chosen to turn that place into any place they wanted to, and they took a lot of money that they took from the international community and they spent it on bombs and guns and building tunnels. So if they need to be destroyed, how do we do that? It's a war. I don't know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that. I assume the Israeli... Of course, everybody is, but that's what happens in a war. Here's a way to stop that. Stop attacking Israel.
That's how Maher completely obliterated Hostin and her woke brigade. They fell right into their own trap. Maher's strategy was brilliant. Bait them into ceding their position on Hamas, then deliver a devastating hammer blow that shattered their argument into 1,000 tiny pieces. He cornered them into admitting that Hamas is, in fact, the villain of the story, and that Israel, like any nation under attack, has the right to defend itself. Sharp move, Maher. It's almost poetic how effortlessly he flipped their moral grandstanding on its head. The woke crowd loves to muddy the waters with vague condemnations and abstract calls for peace, while conveniently sidestepping the very real actions of terrorist organizations like Hamas. But Maher didn't let them off the hook. With his trademark wit and no-nonsense approach, he forced them to confront the uncomfortable truth. You can't call yourself a champion of justice while refusing to acknowledge blatant aggression and violence. By the end, Hostin and her brigade weren't just outsmarted. They were left trying to rebuild their shattered narrative with pieces that no longer fit. Bill Maher masterfully dismantled Sunny Hostin and the woke mob, exposing their hypocrisy in flawed arguments. Hostin's claim that Trump only won because the presidential bar was set too low fell apart as Maher highlighted how Trump resonated with voters through relatable, pragmatic messaging, something the left's obsession with identity politics failed to address. Maher also called out their habit of weaponizing language, twisting terms like equity and social justice for divisive agendas. In their debate, Hostin attempted to trap Maher, but he turned the tables, making her admit the contradictions in her stance on Hamas and Israel. Through wit, sarcasm, and sharp logic, Maher revealed how the woke brigade alienates people with double standards and performative outrage. Maher's verbal takedown is indicative of how even the liberals are tired of the woke mob's theatrics. Hopefully, the woke mob sees the signs on the wall and abandons its ideologies before the ship sinks lower. And with this, we draw the curtains on today's episode. If you loved it, then leave us a like and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching. See you in